we are just starting to get a look at documents that have been released by the Justice Department just a few minutes ago.
I didn't know much about him.
Well, that's just not true.
That's an island over a mile away from St. Thomas, the main island. And it's out there and it's isolated. He purchases that, right? Then he owns the jet.
But it's very disturbing what Ghislaine says about Meghan, that Meghan was part of that ring. Why else would Virginia Roberts call her as a witness? Why else?
Considered a minor for prostitution. I'm going to invoke my Fifth Amendment right.
Do I have any doubt that Rachel Meghan Markle was a call girl? Of course not. I don't have any doubts whatsoever. I believe that she's being protected not because of who she is, but because of the connections of the people that...
Prince Harry is back in the UK. And no, let's stop pretending this is some spiritual return, some quiet healing journey, some olive branch tour dressed up in humility. This isn't peace. This isn't reflection. This is panic with a boarding pass. Because people do not run back to the places they publicly set on fire unless the flames are suddenly chasing them too. This is the same man who accused his family of cruelty. The same man who called the monarchy cold, racist, broken, and emotionally abusive. The same man who sold royal silence as oppression until silence suddenly became the only thing worth having. And after many, many years of lies being told about me and my family, there comes a point where, again, going back to the relationship between certain members of the family and the tabloid press, those certain members have decided to get into bed with the devil. And here's the uncomfortable truth people don't want to sit with. You don't come crawling back to an institution you branded toxic unless it's the only shield powerful enough to protect you. This isn't forgiveness. This isn't pride swallowing. This is survival instinct kicking in. Because whatever Harry is facing right now, no California publicist can spin it away. No podcast can soften it. No glossy press release can bury it under buzzwords. So why now? Why the rush? Why the sudden sprint back toward the palace gates? Because somewhere far away, behind concrete walls and razor wires, silence stopped being profitable. And when silence stops paying, names start getting spoken. Looking back now, her stories have changed so many times about what happens when it happens. There's this new article that came out that reads, Meghan Markle's CV included adult entertainment and entertaining guests for Jeffrey Epstein. Let's talk about the players here, because this is where things get uncomfortable. First, Prince Harry, a man who traded institutional power for personal freedom and may now desperately need that power back. Second, the palace, cold, ancient, calculating, but undefeated when it comes to containing scandal. And third, the wild card, a woman with nothing left to lose, Ghislaine Maxwell. So now we get into Meghan, the heart of it all, because this new article didn't whisper, it shouted, it didn't hint. It accused. Meghan Markle's name tied to entertaining guests for Jeffrey Epstein. Her empire, gone. Her Hollywood friends, gone. Her future already written in federal ink. And here's the rule nobody ever says out loud. People stay quiet only when silence still benefits them. For Maxwell, silence no longer pays. According to the narrative behind the story, she isn't implying. She isn't dancing around words. She's naming names. Real ones. Together with Prince Andrew. And people would be foolish to believe Meghan Markle didn't know Prince Andrew before all of this. Jeffrey Epstein was invited to the royal box back in 2000. That wasn't random, that wasn't accidental, that was access. And when moments like that resurface, the fallout doesn't begin on social media. It begins behind closed doors. Emergency calls, quiet flights booked, meetings that never make calendars, decisions made fast because testimony doesn't care about fairy tales. So what does any of this have to do with Harry's wife? Why does Meghan Markle keep circling back into this conversation? I believe she's a nobody, but a nobody who knows exactly who put her where she landed. And that's what makes this dangerous. That's why those documents were redacted. Because Epstein's world was never about cameras. It was about proximity, private rooms, no recordings, no paper trails. Not everyone in those spaces committed crimes, but being there meant seeing things, hearing things, noticing patterns. And memory doesn't disappear. It waits. Because silence protects power until someone remembers. And one location keeps resurfacing again and again. People like Meghan Markle or Jeffrey Epstein don't just pop out of nowhere. If they do, it's because they were planted. We know Meghan went after Harry, but she didn't do it alone. On the surface, Soho House looks harmless. Soft lighting, creative types, networking dressed up as vibes, but behind the scenes, it was infrastructure. A quiet corridor where Hollywood brushed against finance, where new money met old power, where influence happened without announcements. You weren't there to be famous, you were there to be useful. Deals weren't signed there, they were understood, and one familiar name kept moving through those rooms. Ghislaine Maxwell, according to one version of the article, claims she didn't know Meghan Markle. But let's not forget Virginia Roberts called her as a witness because she had information. That matters. Before Palace balconies, there was Meghan Markle. According to the narrative, she was flown internationally for Soho House openings, including Istanbul in 2015. She wasn't the headline, she wasn't the star. She played what insiders call social filler, functional, adjacent to access, quietly valuable. But this is where the math stopped making sense. At the time, she was a supporting actress on a cable show. Comfortable income, sure. But jet setting across elite international circles, that raised eyebrows. No one accused, no one confronted, they just noticed. And when something doesn't add up, memory takes notes. This woman is a terrible thing. And she's known Meghan Markle for quite some time. And isn't it incredible how Jeffrey Epstein was also invited to one of the biggest bashes of the decade, packed with people extremely close to the royal family? Years later, those notes mattered. During the civil case that destroyed Prince Andrew's standing, one name nearly entered the courtroom, not as a defendant, as a witness. And that distinction matters. According to court positioning, her name came up for 3 reasons. She lived in the United States, she was described as a close associate of Prince Andrew during a specific period, and she was said to have been present within Epstein's social environment during key years. She was never called. But the damage wasn't the outcome. It was the fact investigators with subpoena power believed there was something worth asking, like a trail. Ghislaine Maxwell, according to the article, says she did know Meghan Markle. And again, Virginia Roberts called her as a witness. Because once investigators look at your history, curiosity turns into risk. Prince Andrew didn't fall because of tabloids, he fell because of testimony. And Harry knows exactly how that ends. Here's the part people miss. This isn't unique. Royal institutions don't erase inconvenient pasts, they manage them. History gets absorbed. Discussion ends, stability is preserved. Once a crown enters the picture, truth becomes secondary to containment. This isn't scandal, it's a system. And then comes the detail that made the internet sit up. Meghan allegedly went by the name Flower, a character name, a softer image, a way to appear demure. But this woman has been around the block so many times there's already a trail behind her. And then the internet woke up, timelines stitched together, flight paths highlighted, old photos resurfaced with new captions, TikToks with ominous music, tweets that start with "I'm not saying," but memes doing what tabloids can't. Fast, messy, relentless. One clip loops everywhere, another screenshot refuses to disappear. Would you believe her if you saw that clip? Because once the crowd starts asking questions, it doesn't stop. This is where things shift. Because this isn't gossip anymore. Brands don't like proximity to risk. Hollywood hates unpredictability. Institutions panic when testimony enters the chat. Deals stall. Invitations vanish, phones go quiet, and Harry knows this playbook. Once sworn statements begin, there's no PR strategy powerful enough to put the genie back in the bottle. Panic stops being dramatic and starts being logical. The press may be trying to pave a return path for Meghan, almost like Fergie, but Ghislaine's revelations put her in a very, very bad light. Because if even half of this is true, Meghan Markle is far worse than anyone imagined. Zoom out. This isn't jealousy. This isn't tabloid cruelty. This is proximity. Who was in the room? Who stayed silent? How long was silence allowed to protect power? Because credibility doesn't collapse all at once. It fractures quietly, then suddenly. And if institutions can rewrite history, what happens when testimony bypasses them entirely? She knew who Harry was. She set after him. And right now, unemployed, isolated, somehow still protected, it doesn't make sense. sense. Harry ran back to the palace not for forgiveness, but for protection. Silence stopped paying, memory woke up, and testimony doesn't care who you married. So here's the real question. Did Harry know, or did he walk in blind? Because either answer ends the fairy tale. If you love Scandal Served Cold, subscribe. This story isn't over.